Captain Taemin Park stood in the center of the massive council chamber. The room was so big that his voice would get lost without the sound system. Around him, hundreds of alien beings sat on floating platforms that moved up and down like a strange elevator system. Each species had their own section, and most of them looked down at the human delegation with the same expression people might use when looking at insects. Taemin had been to this place many times before. Each visit made him more angry than the last. Today felt different, though. Today felt like something was about to break. The Galactic Council called this place the heart of civilization. Taemin called it the heart of arrogance. The building itself was made from materials that humans had mined and refined. The energy that powered it came from fusion reactors that humans had designed. Even the air recycling system was based on human technology. But when the council members spoke, they acted like humans were barely smart enough to tie their own shoes. Ambassador Sujin Lee stood next to Taemin. She held a small device that translated the alien languages into Korean, then into English, for the official records. Sujin had been doing this job for 10 years. Taemin could see the tiredness in her eyes. She was tired of translating insults. She was tired of being polite to beings who thought humans were nothing more than useful pets. The current speaker was Counselor Vexithera. She belonged to a species that looked like giant purple spiders with too many eyes. Her voice sounded like metal scraping against stone, even through the translator. The human delegation will now hear the new compliance requirements, Vexithera announced. These requirements are not suggestions. They are orders. Taemin felt his hands turn into fists. He forced them to relax. Getting angry here would only make things worse for humanity, but each word felt like a slap in the face. First requirement, Vexithera continued. The human species will increase agricultural output by 60%. This food will be distributed to species with higher nutritional needs. Sujin translated quietly. Taemin did not need the translation. He understood exactly what this meant. The aliens wanted humans to work harder so that other species could eat better, species that already had more food than they needed. Second requirement, the human species will provide 50,000 military volunteers for the next expansion campaign. These volunteers will serve in support roles appropriate to their limited capabilities. Taemin almost laughed at that. Human soldiers had won more battles for the Council than any other species. Human tactics had saved alien lives in conflicts across the galaxy. Human engineers had built the weapons that gave the Council its military advantage, but they still called human capabilities limited. Third requirement. The human species will surrender all research into quantum fold technology. This research will be transferred to more qualified species for proper development. This was the line that broke something inside Taemin. The Quantum Fold Project was humanity's greatest achievement. Dr. Jiwoo Kim had spent 15 years developing the math behind it. Her team had worked day and night to solve problems that other species said were impossible. They had succeeded where every other civilization had failed, and now the Council wanted to take it away. They wanted to give it to species they considered more worthy, species that had contributed nothing to the research but thought they deserved the results because of their genetic superiority. From Luna Station, Dr. Jiwoo Kim watched the proceedings through a holographic link. She had insisted on being present for this meeting, even though she could not attend in person. Her research station was too important to leave unguarded. As she listened to Vexithera speak, her face showed no emotion, but Taemin knew her well, enough to see the anger burning in her eyes. The human delegation may now respond, Vexithera said, but remember that these requirements are not negotiable. They are the will of the Galactic Council. Taemin stepped forward. He had prepared a speech. He had practiced it many times. The speech talked about cooperation and mutual benefit. It explained why the requirements were unfair and how they could be modified to work better for everyone. He opened his mouth to begin the speech. Then he stopped. He looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring down at him. Some looked bored, others looked amused. A few looked hungry, like predators watching prey. Not one of them looked like they cared what he had to say. Honorable Counselors, Taemin began, I must respectfully request that we discuss modifications to these requirements. The human species has been a loyal member of the Galactic Council for over 100 years. We have contributed more resources, technology, and military support than any other member species. Surely this service has earned us the right to negotiate terms that... A loud buzzing sound cut him off. Red lights flashed around his platform. Taemin felt a strange tingling sensation in his head, then suddenly he could not speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. His thoughts felt foggy and distant. The neural dampener. They had put a neural dampener on him. This device was used to control dangerous criminals and wild animals. In all the recorded history of the Galactic Council, it had never been used on a diplomatic representative. The Council had just treated the official ambassador of humanity like a mad dog that needed to be muzzled. Sujin gasped. Even she had not expected this level of insult. Around the chamber, alien delegates watched with interest, like they were enjoying a particularly good entertainment show. The human delegate has exceeded his speaking time, Vexathara announced. The neural dampener will remain active until the human delegation acknowledges acceptance of the requirements. Taemin struggled against the device's effects. He could feel it pressing against his mind like a heavy weight. The harder he fought, the stronger it became. The aliens watched his struggles with obvious amusement. In the back of the human delegation area, Minister Dong-hyun Choi quietly activated a small recording device. For years, he had been documenting the Council's treatment of humanity. Every insult, every unfair demand, every casual cruelty. He had been building a file that showed the true nature of galactic civilization. Today's events would be the final entries in that file. Dong-hyun looked at his watch. In exactly 37 minutes, a coded message would be transmitted to Earth. The message would contain only 2 words. Execute Exodus. Most humans in the galaxy did not know what Project Exodus was. Even most human government officials had never heard the name. It was the most secret project in human history. Only a few dozen people knew the truth about what humanity had been preparing for the past 20 years. Today, they would finally use it. Taemin stopped struggling against the neural dampener. He stood perfectly still and looked directly at Vexathara. Even though he could not speak, his eyes said everything that needed to be said. They promised that this insult would not be forgotten. They promised that there would be consequences. Vexathara misunderstood his stillness for submission. Good, she said. The human delegate has learned proper behavior. The neural dampener will be removed when the human delegation formally accepts the requirements. Sujin looked at Taemin. She could see the decision in his eyes. Without a word, she closed her translation device and put it in her bag. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. One by one, the other human delegates followed her. They said nothing. They made no speeches. They simply left. The aliens watched in confusion. This was not how diplomatic meetings were supposed to end. Delegates were supposed to argue and negotiate and eventually submit. They were not supposed to just walk away. As the humans reached the chamber doors, the neural dampener finally released Taemin. He could speak again, but he chose not to. Instead, he took one last look around the chamber. He memorized the faces of the beings who had humiliated him and his species. Then he followed his delegation out of the heart of civilization. Behind them, the aliens began to talk among themselves. Some laughed about human rudeness. Others made jokes about primitive species and their emotional problems. A few wondered if they should send ships to Earth to force compliance with the requirements. None of them understood what had just happened. They thought they had won. They thought they had put the troublesome humans in their place. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. On Luna Station, Dr. Ji-Woo Kim received Dong-hyun's coded message. She looked at it for a long moment, then walked to her laboratory's main computer. She entered a password that she had memorized but never used. The screen displayed a single question. Are you sure you want to begin Project Exodus? Ji-Woo looked out her laboratory window at the blue planet hanging in space below. Earth looked so peaceful from here, so small and defenseless. The aliens thought it would always be there for them to exploit. They were wrong. Ji-Woo pressed the confirmation button. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters began sending signals to every human colony, station, and outpost. The signals contained detailed instructions that had been prepared for years, but never activated. The message was simple. Come home. Bring everything. Leave nothing behind. Humanity's time as members of the Galactic Council was over. It was time to show the universe what humans were really capable of. President Wu Jin-nam sat in his office in Seoul, looking at the reports that covered his desk. Each report told the same story from a different part of the galaxy. Human colonies were packing up. Human stations were powering down. Human ships were coming home. The decision had been made. There was no going back now. In 6 hours, he would address not just Earth, but every human being in the galaxy. The message would be broadcast on every human communication channel. It would also be transmitted on open frequencies that alien governments monitored. Everyone would hear what humanity had decided to do. Wu Jin had been president for 3 years. In that time, he had dealt with trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and resource allocation problems. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Today, he would announce that humanity was leaving galactic civilization forever. The door to his office opened. Dr. Boram Jung entered carrying a datapad. She was the head of the Terran Space Development Corporation, the organization responsible for managing human activities throughout the galaxy. For the past week, she had been coordinating the largest logistics operation in human history. "How are we doing?" Wu Jin asked. "Ahead of schedule," Boram replied. "The mining colonies in the Kepler systems finished packing yesterday. The research stations around Wolf 359 are already en route to Earth. The agricultural colonies in the Centauri region will be ready to leave within 48 hours. She set her datapad on the president's desk. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of small dots representing human installations. Green dots meant the evacuation was complete. Yellow dots meant evacuation was in progress. Red dots meant evacuation had not yet begun. Most of the dots were green. "What about the infrastructure?" Wu Jin asked. "That's where it gets interesting," Boram said with a slight smile. "The aliens don't realize how much they depend on our systems. Human-built power grids supply energy to 40% of council member worlds. Human-designed computer networks handle 60% of galactic communications. Human-maintained defensive platforms protect the major trade routes. And when we leave, those systems will stop working, some immediately, others over time, as they need maintenance that only humans can provide. The aliens are about to discover what the galaxy looks like without us." Wu Jin nodded. He felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because the aliens were about to learn a hard lesson about taking humans for granted. Sadness because many innocent beings would suffer when human-maintained systems failed. But humanity had tried cooperation. They had tried negotiation. They had tried being good galactic citizens for over a century. The only response had been more demands and greater humiliation. Sometimes the only way to teach someone a lesson was to let them experience the consequences of their actions. Trade Minister Yoon Seo-han knocked on the office door and entered. She looked tired but determined. For the past 3 days, she had been fielding communications from alien governments who were starting to realize that something unusual was happening. "The aliens are getting nervous," she reported. "I've received over 200 messages asking about human activities. Most of them are still treating this like some kind of negotiating tactic. They think we're trying to get better terms from the council." "What are you telling them?" Wu Jin asked. "Nothing specific, just that humanity is reevaluating its galactic commitments. A few of the smarter species are starting to ask more serious questions, but most of them still think this is a bluff." "Let them think that," Wu Jin said. "The truth will become clear soon enough." On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Kyung-ho Shin stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Incheon. Around him, dozens of human warships were preparing to leave their patrol stations. These ships had protected alien trade routes for decades. They had fought pirates, smugglers, and hostile alien factions. They had kept the peace in sectors where no other force could maintain order. Now they were going home. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmission from the Vorthak trade convoy. They're requesting continued escort through the Rigel Nebula." The Vorthak were among the species that had been most vocal about human inferiority. Their delegates to the Galactic Council regularly made speeches about how humans were only useful for manual labor and military support roles. They had supported every measure to restrict human rights and freedoms. "Send a reply," Admiral Shin ordered. "Tell them that human escort services are no longer available. Suggest they contact the Galactic Council for alternative protection. Sir, that convoy will be attacked by pirates within 12 hours of entering the nebula. The Rigel pirates have been waiting for exactly this opportunity. That's not our problem anymore, the Admiral replied. The Council has made it clear that humans are only good for support roles. Let them find someone else to do the supporting. The communications officer sent the message. Within minutes, a frantic reply came back from the Vorthak convoy commander. He offered to pay triple the standard escort fee. When that was refused, he offered 10 times the standard fee. When that was also refused, he began making threats about reporting human disobedience to the Council. Admiral Shin ordered his communications officer to stop accepting transmissions from the convoy. In research stations throughout the galaxy, human scientists were implementing the final phase of their withdrawal. Engineer Min Kyung-an worked quickly to install special devices in the main computer systems of Starbase Omicron. The station was jointly operated by humans and 3 alien species. The aliens had provided the funding and raw materials. Humans had provided the knowledge and skill to make it work. Now the humans were leaving, and they were making sure their knowledge went with them. The devices Min Kyung installed were called Scorched Earth modules. They would wait 72 hours after the last human left the station, then they would activate. Every piece of human-designed technology would receive a signal that would cause its quantum processors to degrade into useless silicon. Every human-written software program would delete itself. Every human-built system would become a pile of expensive scrap metal. The aliens would be left with empty rooms and broken equipment. If they wanted to rebuild, they would have to do it without human help. Is this really necessary? Asked Dr. Hwan Jun-so, one of Min Kyung's colleagues. Some of these systems support life support and medical facilities. The aliens have repeatedly told us that they don't need human technology, Min Kyung replied while installing another module. They've said that any civilized species could build better systems than primitive humans. Now they'll get the chance to prove it. But people might die. Then maybe the aliens should have thought of that before they decided to treat us like servants. Min Kyung finished installing the module and moved to the next system. Besides, the modules are programmed to maintain life support systems until replacement technology can be installed. We're not trying to commit genocide. We're just taking our toys and going home. At the University of Galactic Sciences, Dr. Siri Kang was making a discovery that would change everything humans thought they knew about the Galactic Council. She was a xenobiologist who had spent years studying alien species and their development patterns. As part of the withdrawal, she had been tasked with copying all human research data and analyzing alien scientific records. What she found made her sick to her stomach. Hidden in the classified archives of the Council's Biological Development Authority were detailed files on humanity. The files showed that the Council had been deliberately suppressing human technological and social development for the past 50 years. Whenever humans made a breakthrough that might challenge alien superiority, Council agents would introduce social conflicts, economic problems, or political crises to slow human progress. The Council had sabotaged human research projects. They had assassinated human scientists who got too close to dangerous discoveries. They had even introduced engineered diseases to human colonies when population growth exceeded Council targets. Humanity's classification as a primitive auxiliary species was not based on actual human capabilities. It was a deliberate lie designed to justify treating humans as a slave race. Siri copied the files and sent them through encrypted channels to government officials on Earth. Within hours, the evidence was on President Wu Jin-nam's desk. As Wu Jin read the files, his anger transformed into something colder and more dangerous. The aliens had not just been arrogant and dismissive. They had been actively working to keep humanity weak and dependent. This changed everything. Withdrawal was no longer enough. The galaxy needed to learn what happened when you tried to enslave the human race. Ambassador In-ho John had one final task to complete before leaving the galactic capital. He had been Earth's senior diplomat for 8 years. He had attended countless meetings, negotiated dozens of treaties, and represented human interests in thousands of disputes. Today, he would deliver humanity's final message to the Galactic Council. The council chamber was nearly empty when In-ho arrived. Most of the alien delegates were attending emergency sessions with their own governments, trying to understand what humans were doing and why. Only a few junior representatives remained to receive his message. Inho walked to the center of the chamber where Captain Taemin Park had been. 6 months had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. What started as alien amusement had turned into panic, and panic had become desperation. Council Logistics Director Kepthari stared at the reports covering her desk. The octopus-like alien had managed galactic supply chains for 20 years. She had always prided herself on keeping everything running smoothly. Now she felt like she was trying to hold back an ocean with her bare tentacles. The numbers were terrible and getting worse every day. 47% of Council infrastructure had failed completely. Another 30% was operating at reduced capacity. The remaining systems were breaking down faster than they could be repaired. The problem was not just the missing humans. The problem was that humans had built everything to work together. When one human-designed system failed, it caused failures in other systems. The cascade effect was destroying galactic civilization piece by piece. Kepthari's assistant, a nervous creature from the insect-like Hivari species, scuttled into her office carrying another stack of emergency reports. "Director," the assistant buzzed anxiously, "we have 17 more worlds reporting power grid failures. The Centauri mining operation has been completely abandoned, and the Vega agricultural zones are requesting immediate evacuation assistance." Evacuation. Assistance? Kepthari's tentacles writhed in frustration. With what ships? Half our transport fleet is stranded in dead space because the navigation beacons are offline. The navigation beacon network had been one of humanity's greatest contributions to galactic civilization. Human engineers had placed thousands of quantum beacons throughout the galaxy, creating invisible roads that allowed ships to travel safely between star systems. The beacons required constant maintenance and periodic recalibration. With the humans gone, the beacons were going dark one by one. Ships that ventured too far from major worlds were getting lost in space. Some had been missing for weeks. On Earth, economic analyst Jae-hyun Lee monitored galactic communications from a hidden facility buried deep beneath the Korean mountains. She had spent years studying alien economic systems. Now she was watching those systems collapse in real time. The Galactic Trade Union stock market has lost 60% of its value, she reported to her supervisor. Commodity prices are fluctuating wildly. The Council's currency is becoming worthless because no one trusts their ability to maintain economic stability. Her supervisor, Director Park Myung-soo, studied the economic data with satisfaction. He had predicted this collapse, but even he was surprised by how quickly it was happening. "What about the individual species?" he asked. "That's where it gets interesting," Jae-hyun replied. "The species that were most hostile to humanity are suffering the worst. The Vorthak Empire is facing system-wide starvation because their agricultural worlds depended on human-designed atmospheric processors. The crystalline hegemony's entire computer network is down because they never learned how to maintain their own quantum servers." She pulled up another display showing galactic shipping routes. Most of the lines on the map were red, indicating routes that were no longer safe to travel. "The pirates are having a field day," she continued. "Trade routes that humans patrolled for decades are now completely lawless. Merchant ships are being attacked faster than the Council can deploy protection." Director Park nodded grimly. "And the Council's military response?" "What military response?" Jae-hyun laughed bitterly. "Council forces are designed for expansion, campaigns against primitive worlds. They have no experience with large-scale piracy or system defense. Without human tactical support, they're losing battles against opponents they used to crush easily." The irony was not lost on either of them. For decades, alien military leaders had complained about having to rely on human tactical support. They claimed that any properly evolved species should be able to develop superior military strategies. Now they were discovering that strategy was harder than they thought. Dr. Sunmi Park sat in a shielded communication bunker, monitoring alien transmissions from across the galaxy. As Earth's leading expert in xenolinguistics, she could understand dozens of alien languages without translation devices. This gave her access to communications that the aliens thought were private. What she heard made her realize that humanity's withdrawal was working better than anyone had hoped. "The Saurian Federation just declared martial law," she reported during her daily briefing. "Their industrial worlds are rioting because the factories can't produce basic consumer goods. Apparently, most of their manufacturing equipment was built using human-designed automation systems." She switched to another communication channel. The Aquatic Alliance is blaming the crystalline hegemony for the navigation beacon failures. The hegemony is blaming the Vorthak Empire for not sharing their remaining functional systems. Everyone is pointing tentacles and claws at everyone else. Any word about humans specifically? Asked General Yunwoo back, the military intelligence. Chief. Oh yes, Sunmi smiled grimly. The Council has been sending increasingly desperate messages to Earth. They started with formal requests for humans to return to their duties. Then they tried offering incentives like reduced taxation and increased representation in Council decisions. Now they're making direct threats. She played a recording of the most recent Council transmission. The voice belonged to Supreme Counselor Keth Maran, the highest-ranking official in galactic government. The human species will return to their assigned roles immediately. The translation device rendered his angry words into flat, emotionless text. Failure to comply will result in military action against human space. The Council has the authority and the power to enforce galactic law. General Bayek listened to the recording with interest. Military action. With what military? Half their fleets are stranded because they can't navigate without our beacon network. The other half are busy trying to maintain order on their own worlds. There's more, Sunmi said. She played another recording, this one from a private communication, between two alien military commanders. They're planning a joint operation against Earth. 7 species are pooling their remaining resources for one massive attack. They think that if they can force Earth to surrender, the other human colonies will fall in line. When? Beck asked. Soon. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe less. They're desperate enough to try anything. General Beck made a note to pass this information up the command chain. The aliens still thought they were dealing with the same weak, dependent humanity that had served the Council for over a century. They had no idea what humans had been preparing for during all those years of apparent submission. They were about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Dr. Yoon-ji Nam worked late into the night in her laboratory deep beneath the Swiss Alps. She was one of only a dozen humans who knew the full scope of Project Exodus. While the galaxy thought humanity was simply withdrawing from galactic civilization, the truth was far more complex. Humanity had not spent the last 20 years just building ships and preparing for independence. They had been developing technology that would make the Galactic Council's greatest achievements look like stone tools. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source, the study of quantum mechanics at the subatomic level. While alien civilizations focused on manipulating biology and developing psychic abilities, humans had concentrated on understanding the fundamental laws of physics. What they discovered changed everything. Reality itself was more flexible than anyone had imagined. The universe was not a fixed structure, but rather a quantum field that could be manipulated by beings who understood the underlying mathematics. Space, time, matter, and energy were all variables in an equation that humans had finally learned to solve. Yoonji ran another test on the dimensional translation device. The device looked simple enough, a small cube covered in complex mathematical symbols. But the science behind it represented humanity's greatest achievement. With this technology, humans could step outside the normal flow of space-time. They could exist in parallel dimensions, travel instantaneously between distant points in space, and manipulate matter at the quantum level. The aliens thought they had driven humanity away. The truth was that humanity had chosen to leave so they could complete their transformation into something beyond alien comprehension. Captain So-Young Kim commanded one of the hidden shipyards in the Oort Cloud, the region of space far beyond Pluto where comets originated. The shipyard was invisible to conventional sensors because it existed partially outside normal spacetime. Here, human engineers were building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships used the same dimensional technology that Yoonji was perfecting in her laboratory. They could phase in and out of reality, travel through folded space, and manipulate matter with tools that worked on the quantum level. "How many ships are ready for deployment?" asked Admiral Seok-Jin Yang during his monthly inspection visit. 47 combat vessels and 12 exploration ships, So-Young reported. Each combat vessel is capable of engaging an entire enemy fleet. The exploration ships can travel to parallel dimensions and alternate realities. Admiral Yang nodded approvingly. The numbers were small compared to the massive fleets that the Galactic Council could deploy, but quantity was no longer important when each human ship had cap. Fleet Admiral Skethvar stared at his main display screen, trying to understand what he was seeing. Where Earth should have been, there was nothing but empty space. Not even asteroids or cosmic dust marked where the third planet of Sol system had once orbited. The human ship floating in front of his massive fleet looked small and helpless, but its very presence here raised questions that made Skethvar's scales itch with nervousness. How had it appeared without triggering any of his sensors? Where was the rest of the human fleet, and most importantly, what had happened to Earth? Human vessel, Skethvar transmitted. You will explain the location of your homeworld immediately. Any attempt to deceive Council forces will be treated as an act of war. Captain Daeho Min's response came back almost instantly. The human's voice sounded relaxed, like he was discussing the weather instead of facing the largest military fleet in galactic history. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Admiral. Earth is exactly where it has always been. You're just looking in the wrong dimension. Wrong dimension? Skethvar's tactical officer, a multi-armed creature from the Hexapod Federation, looked up from his instruments in confusion. Sir, that doesn't make sense. There's only one dimension. Counselor Thex Malar, the senior political representative on this mission, activated his communication system. Human, your primitive understanding of physics is showing. Dimensional. Travel is theoretically impossible. Even our greatest scientists have proven that reality cannot be manipulated in such ways. The human captain's laugh echoed through the bridge. Your greatest scientists were wrong about a lot of things. Would you like a demonstration? Before Skethvar could respond, the human ship simply vanished. Not destroyed, not moved to another location, it disappeared as completely as if it had never existed. His sensors showed no trace of it anywhere in the system. Then it reappeared directly behind the Council fleet, then above it, then below it. The ship was jumping around the battle formation like it was playing a game, appearing and disappearing at will. Impossible, whispered the science officer. Our shields should prevent any vessel from materializing inside our defensive perimeter. Your shields protect you from normal space? Captain Min's voice came from everywhere at once, as if his ship was in multiple locations simultaneously. They don't do much good against attacks from parallel dimensions. From her hidden facility in dimensional space, Dr. Gyuri Cho watched the alien confusion with deep satisfaction. She had been one of the lead scientists on Project Exodus, working for 15 years to solve the mathematical problems that made dimensional manipulation possible. The breakthrough had come when human scientists realized that alien physics was fundamentally limited. Every alien species they had studied approached science the same way, by manipulating existing matter and energy within the confines of normal space-time. Humans had taken a different approach. Instead of working within the rules of reality, they had learned to rewrite the rules themselves. The quantum substrate responds beautifully, she reported to her research team. We can manipulate space-time with precision down to the Planck scale. The aliens are operating with Stone Age physics compared to what we've achieved. Dr. Gyuri activated another demonstration. On the bridge of Admiral Skethvar's flagship, every piece of electronic equipment suddenly displayed the same message in perfect alien script. You are now breathing recycled air from a bathroom on Jupiter's moon, Europa. Enjoy. The message was completely false, but the psychological impact was devastating. If humans could hack their systems so completely, what else could they do? Physicist Young Min Seo had been working on dimensional theory for most of his adult life. Now he stood in a laboratory that existed outside normal space-time, preparing to explain humanity's greatest achievement to a galaxy that had never imagined such things were possible. He activated a broad-spectrum transmission that would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. Within minutes, billions of alien beings would hear a human scientist explain why their understanding of reality was hopelessly primitive. Citizens of the galaxy, Young Min began, you have spent millions of years believing that the universe has fixed laws that cannot be changed. You have built your civilizations on the assumption that matter, energy, space, and time are constants that must be accepted and worked around. He paused to let the translation systems catch up. This message was being converted into hundreds of alien languages simultaneously. You were wrong. The universe is not a machine with unchangeable parts. It is a quantum field that responds to conscious manipulation by beings who understand the underlying mathematics. Space can be folded, Time can be redirected, matter can be edited at the subatomic level, and energy can be created or destroyed at will. Young Min gestured to the walls of his laboratory, which showed the swirling patterns of parallel dimensions, flowing around normal space-time like streams around a rock. While you focused on genetic manipulation and psychic development, humans learned to manipulate the source code of reality itself. We didn't just build better technology. We transcended the limitations that you still think are absolute laws of nature. The transmission continued for another 10 minutes, with young men explaining basic dimensional theory in terms simple enough for alien scientists to understand. He knew that most of them would refuse to believe what they were hearing. The implications were too threatening to their worldview, but some would listen. Some would understand that humanity had become something far beyond what the Galactic Council could cope with. Admiral Kite Lim monitored the alien fleet's movements from his command center deep within dimensional space, Earth's entire military. Command structure had been relocated to this parallel reality where they could observe normal space-time without being detected. The alien fleet was showing signs of panic. Ships were breaking formation as individual captains tried to understand what was happening. Several vessels had attempted to retreat, but found that their navigation systems no longer worked properly. The quantum distortions caused by human dimensional technology were interfering with alien instruments. "How long before they figure out that we moved Earth?" asked his operations officer. "They never will," Kaite replied with confidence. "Their science cannot detect parallel dimensions. As far as their instruments are concerned, Earth was never here. It's like we edited it out of their history." That was exactly what humanity had done. Using dimensional manipulation technology, they had moved Earth, Luna, Mars, and all the asteroid colonies into a parallel space-time continuum. The planets still existed, but they were now invisible and untouchable to beings limited to normal dimensions. Strategist Herein Yu had spent months planning the psychological aspects of this operation. Humans wanted to do more than just escape the Galactic Council. They wanted to demonstrate their new capabilities in a way that would reshape galactic politics forever. The aliens need to understand that they are no longer the dominant force in the galaxy, she explained to her planning committee. They need to realize that humanity has become something they cannot fight, cannot negotiate with, and cannot control. "What about the other subject species?" asked Colonel Jaewon No. "There are dozens of civilizations that the Council has been oppressing. Won't they want freedom too?" "That's exactly what we're counting on," Hyerin smiled. "When the subject species see that the supposedly primitive humans have become more powerful than their oppressors, they'll start asking themselves why they should remain slaves." The plan was working perfectly. Across the galaxy, reports were coming in about rebellions on Council member worlds. Species that had been dominated for centuries were rising up against their alien masters. The Council's military was stretched, too thin to cope with widespread revolt. Captain Da Yun Eam commanded one of the reconnaissance ships monitoring Council communications. Her vessel existed partially in normal space and partially in parallel dimensions, making it completely invisible to alien sensors. "The Council leadership is in full panic mode," she reported during her daily briefing. "They're receiving reports about humans from all across the galaxy. Apparently, we're simultaneously attacking their colonies, liberating their slaves, and destroying their infrastructure on dozens of different worlds." "Are we actually doing any of those things?" asked Intelligence Director Kwon Tae-seok. "Not directly," Da-un replied, "but the subject species think we are. Every time there's a rebellion or equipment failure, the rebels claim that mysterious humans helped them. The Council can't prove we weren't involved because they can't detect our ships." "And the Council's response?" "They're trying to negotiate," Da-un said with obvious amusement. "Several Council members have sent secret communications to Earth, offering to restore humanity's membership with full rights and privileges. They're promising equal representation, unlimited territory, and complete autonomy." Director Kwon nodded grimly. "Too little, too late. Besides, we're beyond needing their permission for anything now." That was the truth that the aliens were slowly beginning to understand. Humanity had not just achieved independence from the Galactic Council, they had evolved beyond the need for galactic civilization entirely. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Skethvar received the message that would change everything. Commander Junho Han watched the alien fleet retreat from Sol System through displays that showed multiple dimensions at once. The Council's massive armada looked impressive in normal space, but from humanity's dimensional stronghold, they appeared small and helpless, like insects crawling across a vast landscape they could not comprehend. The 72-hour deadline had passed 6 hours ago. Most of the alien ships had withdrawn to what they thought was a safe distance, but 17 Council vessels remained, in Sol system, apparently believing that humanity's threats were empty bluffs. Those ships were about to learn that humans never bluffed. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Yuna Song from the communication station, "we're receiving final surrender requests from 3 more alien governments. The crystalline hegemony is offering to pay tribute to humanity in exchange for protection. The Aquatic Alliance wants to form a defensive pact against other Council species." "And the ships that are still here?" Junho asked. "No response to our final warnings. The Vorthak battlecruiser Supremacy is actively scanning our former planetary positions. The Saurian Federation destroyer pack is trying to trace our dimensional signatures. They're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably very stupid," Junho said grimly. "The Vorthak and Saurians were always the most arrogant species in the Council. They still think they're dealing with primitive humans who can be intimidated." He opened a communication channel to Dr. Eugene Sohn, the lead scientist for the Dimensional Weapons Project. "Dr. Sohn, are you ready to begin the demonstration?" "All systems are prepared," came the reply from the research facility that existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. "We'll start with something subtle to get their attention, then escalate until they understand the new reality." Dr. Eugene had spent 5 years developing weapons that operated by manipulating the fundamental forces that held matter together. Unlike conventional weapons that destroyed targets through explosive force or energy beams, dimensional weapons could edit reality at the quantum level. The first demonstration was targeted at the Vorthak battlecruiser. The massive ship was scanning the area where Earth used to be, trying to detect any trace of human technology. Dr. Eugene selected a small section of the ship's armor plating and began adjusting its molecular structure. She didn't destroy the atoms. She simply convinced them that they were no longer connected to each other. On the bridge of the Supremacy, Captain Vorthok watched his sensors with growing frustration. The humans had obviously developed some kind of cloaking technology, but there should still be gravitational signatures or quantum disturbances that his instruments could detect. "Captain!" his science officer suddenly called out. "Atmospheric breach in Section 7. We're losing pressure." "Battle damage," Vorthak demanded. "Did someone fire on us?" "No, sir. No energy weapons detected. The hull just opened up somehow. There's a perfect circular hole in the armor, but no signs of any external attack." Vorthak moved to examine the damage reports on his main screen. The hole was exactly 1 meter in diameter and cut cleanly through 3 layers of armor plating. But his sensors showed no heat damage, no molecular disruption, no trace of any known weapon technology. It was as if the metal had simply decided to not exist anymore. "Seal the breach and continue scanning," he ordered. "The humans are trying to frighten us with tricks and illusions." Dr. Eugene monitored the alien response with amusement. The Vorthak captain was predictably refusing to acknowledge what had happened. Time for a more dramatic demonstration. She targeted the ship's main sensor array, a complex piece of equipment that cost more than most planetary defense systems. This time, instead of removing matter, she would rearrange it. The sensor array began to change shape. Its carefully designed crystalline structures started flowing like liquid, forming new patterns that spelled out a message in perfect Vorthak script. "Last warning. Leave now or face consequences." Captain Vorthak stared at his main display in disbelief. His most sophisticated piece of equipment had just been turned into a billboard. The humans had somehow manipulated matter at the molecular level, reshaping advanced technology like it was soft clay. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" His science officer ran frantic calculations on his backup instruments. "Sir, the energy requirements to manipulate matter at this level should be impossible. Even our most advanced theoretical models say it cannot be done." "Then our models are wrong," Vorthak replied grimly. "Signal the other ships. We're withdrawing immediately." But it was too late. Dr. Eugene had already selected the next target. President Ji-Hoon Kong watched the demonstrations from Earth's new dimensional capital. The planet now existed in a space between parallel realities, visible to alien instruments only when humans chose to make it so. From here, he could observe the galaxy without being observed in return. The psychological impact is exactly what we hoped for, reported Dr. Minjung Yang, the chief military psychologist. The aliens are realizing that their understanding of physics is fundamentally incomplete. They're not just facing superior technology, they're confronting the fact that reality itself is more flexible than they ever imagined. What about the species that have requested protection? President Kang asked. 47 civilizations have formally requested to be placed under human protection, replied Foreign Minister He Young-kwan. Most of them are former subject species that the Council had been oppressing. They're offering to share resources and technology in exchange for guarantees that they won't be reconquered. And our response? We're accepting all requests from species that can demonstrate a commitment to individual liberty and peaceful coexistence. But we're making it clear that protection comes with responsibilities. Any species under human protection must treat all other species as equals. This was humanity's new diplomatic doctrine. Instead of the Council's hierarchical system, where stronger species dominated weaker ones, humans were establishing a network of independent civilizations that cooperated. As equals, the species that accepted human protection would be safe from conquest or oppression, but they would also be expected to extend the same protection to others. Tactical Coordinator Soo-Jin Cha was responsible for the military aspects of the demonstration. Her job was to show the galaxy exactly what happened to species that continued to threaten or oppress others. The Saurian Federation destroyers had ignored all warnings and were now actively hunting for human installations. Their pack leader, Commander Saleth, had publicly declared that reptilian species were naturally superior to mammals and that the Council would never negotiate with warm-blooded primitives. Soo-Jin decided to teach him about the dangers of species supremacism. Target their weapon systems first, she instructed her technical team. I want to disable their ability to threaten others without destroying the ships themselves. The dimensional weapons operated by selectively removing the strong nuclear force from targeted matter. This caused atomic nuclei to lose their coherence, effectively turning solid matter into a cloud of individual particles. One by one, the energy cannons on the Saurian destroyers simply stopped existing. The weapons didn't explode or melt. They just dissolved into their component atoms, leaving perfectly smooth gaps in the ship's hulls. Commander Saleth watched his most powerful weapons disappear one after another. Each time a weapon vanished, his science officer reported the same impossible reading. The atoms were still there, but they were no longer connected to each other in any meaningful way. "Return fire!" Saleth ordered desperately. "Use everything we have." "Sir, we have nothing left to use," his weapons officer reported. "All energy weapons are gone. The missile launchers have also been edited. Even our defensive pulse cannons have been reduced to individual atoms." Saleth stared at his tactical display. His powerful destroyer pack had been rendered completely harmless without a single shot being fired in return. The humans had demonstrated the ability to selectively dismantle his ships piece by piece. "Signal retreat," he ordered quietly. "Maximum speed to the edge of the system." But Dr. Haewon Go had other plans for the Saurian commander. Dr. Go was the leading expert on council psychology and had spent years studying how different alien species responded to demonstrations of power. The Saurians, she knew, only respected overwhelming force. Half measures would be interpreted as weakness. Commander Saleth needs to understand that species supremacism is no longer acceptable, she explained to her research team. But we also need to show mercy to demonstrate that humans are protectors, not conquerors. The demonstration she designed was both terrifying and merciful. Instead of destroying the Saurian ships, she would move them. Admiral Seung-Won Jeong oversaw the final demonstration from the command center of humanity's dimensional fleet. His ships existed in multiple realities simultaneously, making them effectively invulnerable to conventional attack. "Target the Kepler 442 system," he instructed his navigation officer. "Move all 17 remaining council ships there. Keep them intact, but make sure they understand that we could have sent them anywhere or nowhere." The dimensional translocation technology operated by creating temporary bridges between parallel space-time continuums. Objects could be moved instantaneously across vast distances without regard for Premier Sang-Hyun Lim stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible just 2 years ago. The station existed in dimensional space between realities, serving as humanity's new capital for galactic affairs. Through the massive transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of different species arriving and departing in peaceful cooperation. Crystalline vessels from the former hegemony worked alongside bioships from the Aquatic Alliance. Insectoid craft shared docking facilities with reptilian transports. Even some former Council warships had been converted into peaceful exploration vessels. The transformation had been more complete than anyone had dared hope. In just 1 year since the Council's dissolution, the galaxy had become a place that no one could have imagined under the old system. "The morning briefing is ready, Premier," announced his assistant, Dr. Ye-Jin-Oh. She had been appointed as the cultural observer for the new galactic community, responsible for documenting the changes taking place across the galaxy. Sang-Hyun nodded and walked to the briefing room, where representatives from 43 different species waited to participate in the daily coordination meeting. This was how decisions were made now, through discussion and consensus, rather than through dominance and submission. "Good morning, everyone," Sang-Hyun began. "Let's start with the status reports from the liberation zones." Commander Rothek of the former Cathari slave colonies spoke first. His people had been forced to work in asteroid mines for over 3 centuries, treated as nothing more than living tools by their Vorthak masters. "The Cathari colonies are exceeding all expectations," Rothek reported with obvious pride. "Our artists have created 17 new forms of sculpture that incorporate zero-gravity techniques. Our musicians have developed harmonic patterns that can only be performed in space. We're discovering talents that we never knew we had." This was happening throughout the galaxy. Species that had been forced into narrow roles by the Council were now free to explore their full potential. The results were spectacular. Dr. Ye-Jin made notes as each representative spoke. The Nelthani, who had been banned from space travel because the Council considered aquatic species unsuitable for vacuum environments, had become some of the most innovative ship designers in the galaxy. Their bioships could repair themselves, adapt to different environments, and perform maneuvers that conventional vessels could not match. The Hexapod Federation, once restricted to manufacturing roles, had developed new forms of mathematics that human scientists were still trying to understand. Their 6-armed anatomy allowed them to work with equations in ways that other species could not visualize. Even species that had been Council members were discovering new possibilities. Without the need to maintain dominance over subject races, they could focus their resources on exploration, art, science, and philosophy. "What about the resistance movements?" Sang-Hyun asked. Captain Yeonwoo Seo, who served as the diplomatic liaison for species seeking human protection, pulled up a holographic display showing the current political situation. 14 former Council species have formally requested to join the Constellation Compact, she reported. They've dismantled their hierarchical governments and established democratic systems based on individual rights rather than species superiority. The Constellation Compact was humanity's answer to the Galactic Council. Instead of a hierarchical system where stronger species dominated weaker ones, it was a voluntary association based on mutual respect and cooperation. Membership required. Only one commitment. Never again would any species claim dominion over another. "The Vorthak Empire has split into 17 independent systems," Yeonwoo continued. "Most of them want to join the Compact, but 3 systems are still trying to maintain the old ways. They're calling themselves the True Vorthak Coalition, and claiming that species hierarchy is a natural law that cannot be changed." "And our response?" Sang-Hyun asked. "We're not intervening directly unless they threaten others," Yeonwoo replied. "But we've made it clear that any attempt to reconquer their former slave colonies will result in immediate human intervention." This was humanity's new approach to galactic politics. They didn't force species to change. They simply prevented anyone from forcing others to submit. Species were free to govern themselves however they chose, as long as they didn't try to govern others. Fleet Admiral Hyo Jin Kwak was responsible for enforcing this new system. Her ships patrolled the galaxy not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers, ensuring that freedom remained universal. "We've had to intervene 3 times this month," she reported. "The Saurian supremacist faction tried to attack a Cathari art colony. A group of crystalline traditionalists attempted to reimpose their old caste system, and some Vorthak raiders attacked a neutral trading station. Results? In each case, we used minimal force. The Saurian ships were relocated to empty space, near their home system, with a warning. The crystalline oppressors found their control systems edited to prevent them from restricting others' freedom. The Vorthak raiders had their weapons dissolved and were sent home in shame. This was the beauty of humanity's dimensional technology. They could intervene precisely, using exactly the amount of force needed to stop aggression without causing unnecessary destruction. Dr. Seo Hun-bai, the philosophical advisor to the human government, had spent months analyzing the changes taking place across the galaxy. Her conclusions were remarkable. "We're witnessing the birth of a truly post-scarcity civilization," she explained during her weekly report. "With dimensional technology, we can access unlimited resources from parallel realities. With quantum manipulation, we can transform matter and energy at will. The old reasons for conflict, territory, resources, dominance, no longer apply." "But some species are still fighting," observed Minister Dong-Hwan Kim. "They're fighting ideas, not resources," Dr. Bay replied. "The old council system was based on the belief that some species were naturally superior to others. Those beliefs don't die easily, even when the power structure that supported them has been dismantled. How do we change beliefs? By demonstrating better alternatives. Every time a former slave species creates something beautiful. Every time. Enemies choose cooperation over conflict. Every time diversity produces innovation. We're proving that the old ways were not just wrong, but wasteful." Captain Eugene Moon commanded one of humanity's exploration fleets, vessels that ventured beyond the known galaxy to discover new realms of existence. With dimensional travel, humans could explore not just distant space, but alternate realities and parallel universes. "We've made contact with 17 civilizations that exist in dimensions parallel to our own," she reported during the monthly exploration briefing. "Most of them are amazed that we've learned to travel between realities. A few have technology that even we don't understand yet." "Any threats?" asked Defense Minister Park Hwan-seok. "None so far. Most parallel civilizations are dealing with their own challenges. But we found several that are facing problems we could help solve, if they're interested in cooperation." This was humanity's approach to first contact now. Instead of seeking dominance or advantage, they offered cooperation and mutual benefit. They had learned that diversity of thought and experience was more valuable than uniformity of control. At the Universal Academy, Dr. Tae-Young Kim taught classes that would have been impossible under the old council system. His students included young beings from dozens of different species, all working together on projects their parents could never have imagined. Today's lesson was on quantum mechanics and dimensional theory. His students, a young Cathari artist, 2 Nelthani bioengineers, a hexapod mathematician, and even a reformed young Vorthak who had rejected his species' supremacist traditions, were collaborating on a project to create art that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Professor Kim," asked Zar-Illa, the young Cathari, "why did humans choose to save the galaxy instead of ruling it? Your people have more power than the Council ever did. You could make every species obey you." Dr. Kim smiled at the question. It was one that many beings asked, and one that revealed how deeply the old Council's mindset had affected galactic thinking. "Because anyone who wants ultimate power shouldn't have it," he replied, "and anyone who truly deserves it would never want it." He gestured to the classroom around them, where young beings from formerly hostile species were working together in perfect harmony. "Power should be used to create opportunities, not to control others. The old council used their power to force conformity and submission. We use our power to enable diversity and cooperation." "But what if someone misuses the freedom you've given?" "Them?" asked Velthon, the young Vorthak student. "Then we stop them from hurting others," Dr. Kim replied simply. "But we don't punish entire species for the actions of individuals. We don't force anyone to change their beliefs. We just prevent anyone from forcing their beliefs on others." Young Nathara, one of the Nelthani students, raised a tentacle. "What happens when humanity is no longer the strongest force in the galaxy? What if someone develops technology that's more advanced than yours?" Dr. Kim considered the question carefully. It was something that human philosophers and scientists discussed regularly. Then we'll welcome them as equals and learn fro.